All right, as we, there's Jesse, and we get ready to get going. Thank you. A couple of things on our prayer list we go through. Lloyd Zuber was at church today, and he did say that he appreciated all the prayers for him, that his health allowed him to be at church. And we've had his son and his son's family on our prayer list for a while. The whole family got COVID, and they're over that. They were able to go out and go shopping this week and all kinds of. I think they said the 13-year-old girl still has the COVID cough, which sometimes that sticks with you for quite a while. Jessie starts her next round of treatments on Tuesday. She'll be in the hospital Tuesday through Saturday. So kind of remember her. Last time they did them at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So. And then Jacob's grandpa, Mike, is getting ready to start cancer treatments as well. He asked if he could be put on the prayer list. And then we have the Harbisons that Greg just buried his dad this last Tuesday. And then there is the Price family. Sarah's fiance was the fellow that died down by Libertyville this last week, and his funeral is tomorrow. And then Emily, Kathy's granddaughter, she was taken to the hospital the other day. They thought she was going to get out in the morning. Her blood numbers dropped again, and Kathy had to make a mad dash to the hospital this morning. So she's probably not going to get out tomorrow, and they're trying to make arrangements to get her over to Indianapolis. So that's even a prayer need right there to get where they think she can get better care and all of that. So, and then the family of Norma Sanders, which was Carol Keller's aunt, and she asked if we remember that family as they go through their mourning. So, and then this whole, the whole world peace situation and all those kind of things. So let's go ahead and pray. And Father, we just thank you for this time together, for this beautiful sunshine and lovely day we had today, and the opportunity to be in this room, Lord, together, and Lord, to be at peace with those around us. We're here with no fears or anything, Lord, and just let us not take that for granted. We pray for all these people that we've mentioned on this evening, and for all the people that are displaced because of war and their homelands being invaded and just all that. We do pray for our soldiers, wherever they may be, that they'll be safe, and Lord, that you'll just watch over all of them. We pray for our nation and its leaders, not just in this situation, but for all the things that they deal with for us, no matter if it be in Washington, Indianapolis, or just around the corner. And Lord, we just thankful for your word, for the truth that is there, and just ask that you be with us on this evening. And all these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So we are in 31, getting ready for verse 36. And this kind of set the stage again for where we are and what's going on. Jacob had finally had his fill. He's worked for his father-in-law for 20 years, and for the first 14 years he worked for him for nothing. Well, let me rephrase that. He didn't get any wages for those first 4 years. He got 2 wives and it looks like probably food, and that was about it. And then he made a deal with Laban that he took the kind of the 1%, the ones that nobody really wanted, and all that. And if he could have those, he would breed them, and that's where he started to build his own wages. And as we're going to see, as we saw right from the beginning, before they had a chance to sort those out from the flock, Laban had his sons go through and pull those sheep out. And we said last time, and the sheep and the goats, that would have been about 1% that he was asking for. But they took those and took them 3 days away, so Jacob wouldn't know where they were and be able to count them. And so he finally got his fill, kind of knowing that his father-in-law wasn't the greatest guy in the world and would probably not let him leave. He takes his wife, his kids, his servants, his animals, and shags out. And He's gone for about 3 days before his father-in-law figures out that he's gone. It takes him about 7 days to catch up with him, so this is about 10 days after he left. And so when his father-in-law caught up with him, the night before he arrived, he had a dream in which God spoke to him and said, you don't do anything with Jacob, good or bad. Watch what you say, because if you don't, you're going to have to deal with me. So it really put literally the fear of God in Laban. And so he catches up with Jacob the next day and tells him that. Said, I'd have, more or less, he's telling him, I'd have done you harm and all that if it hadn't been for the fact that God spoke to me last night and told me to not do anything to you, good or bad. He said, but why did you steal my household gods? Because what we find out was that Rachel went in and got her dad's gods before they left. And so Jacob didn't know anything about it. He told him, he said, if you find anybody that's got those gods, he said, bring them out. We'll execute them right here in front of everybody, because everyone that's with Laban was, his sons, probably nephews, brothers, all those things, because Jacob keeps referring to them also as our relatives, because they were his too. Laban was his uncle, and so he's not even treating his nephew well. And his sons, Laban's sons, are, it's everything he had, Jacob has. He stole from our father and all that. That was another reason that he left. So Laban has searched through everything. He goes into Rachel's tent and has them, and she says, forgive me, my Lord or Father, for not getting up. It's my time of the month and all of that. So she's sitting down with her period and on a saddle, and the gods are all underneath the saddle, and he doesn't ask her to get up and look underneath them, so he does not find them anywhere. That's where we pick up with verse 36. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime, he asked Laban. What sin have I committed now that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. I've been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and your goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by a wild beast. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night. Sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years. I was in your household. I worked for 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant between you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So, Jacob, he's hot. And this is about the first time we see him really getting mad over the things, because he had been treated not as a son-in-law, not as a nephew, not even as a family member. He was treated as what they call a bondservant, someone who is indebted to you. They work it off, and then they leave. And he knew that's how he was thought of. That's why he slipped away the way that he did. And so now it's bad enough that was all of it. He accuses him of stealing, and he says, you've searched everybody. Put it out here in front of you. Come and you make those kind of accusations. Stick it out here. Let me see what you found. Let the rest of the relatives see what you found. And he says, get up, set it right out here in front of all of us, and let me see it. Of course, there's nothing to be seen. Now, the other part of that, too, is to remember that it was there, and somebody in his household took it, and he would have never have said those had he known that Rachel was the one that did it. Of course, that was his favorite wife, and he basically served 14 years for her. We talk about him serving 7 years for Leah, 7 years for Rachel. No, he served 7 years thinking he was going to get Rachel, found out he didn't get her, and he served another 7 years to get her. So he actually served 14 years for the wife that he had. And that's we know that there were 6 more years, because he says right here in verse 38, I've been with you for 20 years. And you've mistreated me the whole time. He says, your sheep, they all gave birth. None of them had a miscarriage. In other words, they were having flocks and having lambs and kids when they were supposed to. And the whole deal about the animals torn by wild beasts was that if there was a loss in the flock, and you were to bring it in to show that it was torn by wild beast, and then that actually comes in later on as a law with the laws of Moses and things, to show that you didn't eat it. There were different things you could have done if you're the shepherd out there by yourself. You could sell it, you could eat it, you could trade it. And so to show that you didn't do any of those things with it, if it was a wild animal that killed it, you brought in what was left and you laid it out in front of them so that they could see. You didn't sell it, you didn't eat it, you didn't trade it. It was lost to an animal. And then you were supposed to be absolved of that. But he says, I bore that. When he says, I didn't bring you those, it means I took the loss. I paid for that myself. And that's what he said, I bore the loss myself. And I substituted one of mine for it and all of those. And this was my situation. I was out there by myself. I was out there in the heat. I was out there in the cold. I was up all night long watching the fleeced sheep. Remember that line that we hear every Christmas, shepherds watching their flocks by night. You didn't have to watch them so much during the daytime. And even Jesus mentioned that, the thieves and the wolves, they come at night. So that's when you had to really the shepherds had to be watching their flocks at night more than during the day. And he says, sleep fled from my eyes. And in other words, and he says, I did this for 20 years. And none of your sons, none of your grandsons, none of the rest of the family helped me. I was out here on my own, having to do it on my own. And I did that for 20 years, and 14 for your two daughters. And he could have even thrown out there, and one of them that I didn't want, you tricked me and all that, but it's implied there that Laban would have known 14 years I served you. It should have been 7's all I was planning on. And what did Laban do to him during that 6 years?
Changed the things 10 times.
Yep, changed his, and what was his wages supposed to be? To get the spotted and discolored and all of that. So most likely what occurred was Laban would see whichever ones he had, and we read that when we talked about the first account of husbandry and trying to influence, genetics and all the things that he did. And as Laban saw, well, this group is really doing good, he would change it to that. And this group is good, he'd change it back to that. And 10 times in 6 years is about every 6 months, so that's quite a bit. And so, he said, you weren't fair about it. You didn't just leave it as that, it wasn't even an agreement. You kept changing it. And if it hadn't been for God, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac, you would have sent me away empty-handed. And as a bondservant. Now, the thing about a bondservant is that when you come into the household as a bondservant, you're coming in because you are in debt, or whether you've been sold to them or you have a debt with them. And it's different than being a slave. A bondservant is someone that you come in, you serve for a certain period of time to pay off your debt, and then you're free to go. But you're free to go. Anything that you have acquired in all that time belongs to your master, including wives, children, possessions, any of those things, because you were working off a debt. So you weren't entitled to anything else. And so, and that's what he says. You would have sent me away empty-handed. You would have kept my wives. You would have kept my children. You would have kept my animals. You would have kept everything. And but God is the one that made the difference. God saw my hardship. God is the one that took care of me through all those things. Saw the toil of my hands. And last night, God rebuked. I didn't have to do it. God took care of it. God's the one that told me to leave. One of the things that's kind of interesting was, and how did he refer to God in those two ways, or in the two ways that he refers to him?
The father, telling to his father and of Isaac.
Yeah, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac. Now, why do you think he would have called him the fear of Isaac? Did Isaac ever appear to be afraid of God? Now, you got to remember in the Bible, when it talks about the fear of God, that does not mean being absolutely afraid. It means understanding the power, the majesty, and all that of God and responding in that way. Understanding that God could take you out if he wanted to. It's kind of like, the way I explain it a lot of times, even in sermons and things, is like always, in my life, I had a very healthy fear of my father. Now, I wasn't afraid of my dad. I wasn't afraid about going home or whatever, but I knew if I did something wrong, I was going to have to deal with him, and it wasn't going to be good. Now, but at the same time, I knew my father loved me, watched out for me. He provided for us, did all those things. But there was a right and there was a wrong, and if you did wrong, you were going to have to deal with him. And it's kind of the same thing today. You could say that we all have a fear of the government. Now, we don't have the kind of fear of the government that they have in China or North Korea. We don't really worry about somebody knocking down our door, dragging us out in the middle of the night. But we do have a fear that, if you break the law, you're going to go to jail. That's the fear of the government. That's what keeps us from breaking the law. People don't drive the speed limit or close to it because it says so on a sign, right? You do that because you're going to get arrested. If you get caught, cop's going to pull you over. You hope he's just going to give you a ticket. Well, actually, most people hope they're going to get a warning, and you're glad if you just get a ticket. Because if it's bad enough, they could take you to jail. Or if you get enough of them, you could go to jail. The fear of the fear of the government, so to speak, is what keeps us from, keeps people from stealing, from murdering, and all those things because of the consequences that are there. That's what it means when it talks about, the fear of Isaac and was the holy God of Isaac. And more, he's saying the just God of Isaac, the one that wants it right, and the one that all that. And because that's what is he dealing with here? The God that wants it right. Just told Laban, you don't do these things. And you touch him, you're dealing with me, and that is not going to go well for you. So that's what he wants. That's why he's using that. It's not just the God of Abraham. Plus, it's the God of Abraham. You're looking for these little household gods, right? These little bitty ones, and that they would have put up on a shelf or on the corner and bowed down to, that they had to make themselves and all that. He's already knows about the God of Abraham, because when the servant came to get Rebekah, the first thing he did was prayed, and the first thing he did was told about the God of Abraham and how the sign, and it was supposed to be she came to the well, and they asked, can I get a drink? Well, she says, let me water your camels too. That's the right one. It all fell into place according to the prayer and all that. So, and that God had blessed Abraham, and he had all these things. So, Jacob is bringing all those things up so that he's saying basically, God is on my side. He's on my side. He was on my side. That's how you got the blessing of all your animals, how your flocks grew for that time underneath me, how my flocks grew, and the God that spoke to you last night. So, what's Laban say?
That the daughters and children and flocks are all his.
Yeah, exactly, which is what Jacob was afraid of. Laban is actually verifying, certifying, backing up everything that Jacob was afraid of. Because he says, the women are mine, the children are mine, the flocks are mine. So he is saying, basically, not basically, that just exactly what Jacob was afraid of, that Laban would say. That's what he said. You would send me away empty-handed. And Laban is saying, they're mine. Now, are they his? No, he sold the daughters for 7 years of work for both of them. So that meant that the children were not his, they were Jacob's. And what did the girls say when it came time, when Jacob was asking them about leaving?
They had nothing.
Yeah, we don't have anything. He didn't care about us. And he couldn't care less. He's already spent everything. What he thinks of us is apparent in the way he's treating you, is basically what the girls said. And so they were more than willing, and I mean, literally more than willing to leave. They were anxious to leave too. Let's get out. Let's get away from this, because we are under our father's thumb, and he's treating us all as slaves. And the very thing that Jacob, or Laban's sons were saying that Jacob was afraid of, everything that he has is ours. He's stealing from our dad. And that's what Laban said. Those are my flocks. Well, no, they're not. You had an agreement with him, but he's not living up to the agreement. So Jacob was truly justified in what he did, and what he thought would happen is exactly what Laban here is saying that would happen. Because he says, all you see is mine, yet what can I do? Now, if it wasn't for God, what would he do?
He would take them.
He was going to take them. That's exactly right. And he would have taken them back and left Jacob all by himself. If he left him alive, he would have left him all by himself. All you see is mine, yet what can I do today about these daughters or about the children they have borne? So, that's it. That's over. I would have taken them, and just exactly what Jacob thought, except now I can't. And so now what's he want to do?
Make a covenant.
Make a covenant. So obviously God's on your side. He's not on my side. We need to have an agreement, because it's almost like the statement of Joseph with his brothers. You meant it for harm, God used it for good. And it's kind of that same thing here. So and so now let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us, and not so much a witness as a testimony or an agreement and that sort of things. So verse 45. So Jacob took a stone, set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahabutha, and Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and you today. That is why it was called Gilead. Gilead means witness heap. And so does Jegar Sahadutha. One is in Aramaic and the other one's in ancient Hebrew. They both mean the same thing. So that was why it was called Gilead, and that's why it was also called Mitzvah, which means watchtower, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar. I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. And then he left and returned home. So they're saying, all right, let's make a covenant. And, didn't do you a whole lot of good to have a seal or a written agreement or anything like that. They did this a lot. We see this a lot in the Old Testament, where they would either take a big stone, turn it up on the end like a pillar. So this isn't a little stone. This is something that people come along and say, oh man, that thing should be laying over, and it's a kind that they stood up on the end so that people would see something occurred here. And the same thing with the heap of stones. Stones don't get in a heap by themselves, right? You have to pile them up. And so there is no doubt that these things were set there by somebody. And, and it says something happened here, something occurred here. It's one of those things, if you go out west, I think it's the same thing like in the Appalachian Mountains, and it's the same up in Alaska. We saw it up there. People that hike will take and set up a stone. And somebody will set up one stone, the next person along through there, if somebody else comes by, they stick another rock on top of that, and then there will be another rock on top of that. That every time somebody goes by, they stack it up, and nobody knows who put it there. They just know somebody was here. I'm not the first person who was here, but I may have just been only the second or the third, and so it is a witness that someone was here at some point in time. It's kind of the same thing there, and there are other times that it happens, and so. We talked about Jacob did the same thing at Bethel, stood the stone up on the end, poured oil on it so it would be stained and people would know. And so this is not just going to be a sign of their testament or their covenant with each other. What else is it going to be? What?
A border.
A border, exactly. This is the dividing line between you and me. You can't. Now, basically, if I come across here to do you harm, you have full access to harm me. I can't come across here to harm you. You can't come across here to harm me. Now, it's interesting because here Laban has come this far to do Jacob harm, right? And if it hadn't been for God, he would have. But he has a fear that Jacob would get so big because he's seen how much he has grown in 6 years. Because the first 14 years, he didn't get anything for what he was doing. All of his wealth, and we're going to find out here in the next chapter, it turns out to be quite a bit. All of that he got in 6 years. And he has said when he left, let's see where that was at. We read that when he left, he had camels, he had donkeys, he had manservants, he had maidservants. So he had a lot when he left. And so he gained all that in 6 years. What's he going to gain in another 6 years? Or another 6 years after that? And will he get so big that he comes back and basically tries to take vengeance on me or whatever? Laban's afraid of all this, and that God is on his side, because he's the one that says, let's make a peace border here, the demilitarized zone. And you can't cross this way to do me harm. I don't cross that way to do you harm. We can come up to this point, and that's it. Now, what's the other thing that Laban wants to throw in there on the agreement?
Not to do any harm to one another.
Do what?
Not to do any harm.
Well, yeah, we've talked about the not doing any harm, but there was another part, the Laban side.
Can't take any more wives.
No more wives. And so we do see that he had some feelings for his daughters and his kids. And he's also seen how there was a favorite and there was one that wasn't a favorite. And he knew she wasn't going to be a favorite. That's why he pulled that thing anyway to get her married off and all of that. So if Jacob has one favorite, maybe he might meet somebody else later on that he's even more of a favorite, or they take more wives and things, would diminish what his daughters are entitled to. So, and he's saying, I won't see it, but God will know. And God will judge with you. And he said, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. And so it's kind of a curse that he puts on him. You get any more wives, may God make you pay for that. So they have this, and what's interesting is that Laban says, may the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. Now, he doesn't fully understand it, because the God of Abraham's father was not really the God of Abraham. And that's where, that they kind of split off. But all he's basically saying the God of your family. He doesn't know when it started. He hasn't been a part of it. It is the God of Abraham, but not so much the God of his father, but the God of your family, judge between us. So Jacob takes his oath. And who did he take his oath in? In the name of
Fear.
the fear of Isaac, the fear of the God, the fear of his father Isaac. So, do you see what he's saying here? Laban says, the God of Abraham and all that. He doesn't start with Isaac, and what Jacob is coming back to is, I will take an oath in the name of the one who threatened you last night. That this isn't just some God out there. We're talking about the fear of the just God, the one who wants things right, the God of my father, not the one of all the family before that. The one is here now and active right here. And so he's wanting Laban to understand. This is not about a God that's far. This is about the one I'm taking. You need to remember, the one I'm taking the name of the oath in is the one that told you to leave me alone. That's the one I want you to understand, that's the one we're talking about here. So then what did he do next?
They had a meal.
They had a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then invited his relatives to a meal. Now, chances are it was the sacrifice could have been done in one or two ways, and it really doesn't say so much back then. A lot of times, you'll even read it after the laws of Moses. They get the temple or the tabernacle and all that, the sacrificial system set up. There were different kinds of meals. Some of them they only offered part of the animal. There were what were called the whole burnt sacrifices, where you offered everything to God. The whole thing was burnt up. Sometimes they took a part of it and offered that on the fire. Part of it went to the priest. Part of it may come back to the family and all that. So we don't know if this was a whole burnt sacrifice or if this was just, or if they actually cooked another animal for the feast. So, but they participated in the sacrifice, or at least Jacob sacrificed. He didn't just make an oath, he sacrificed to the God. He worshiped God for bringing him here, for being with him and all that. And then invites his relatives to a meal. And they ate, which means what?
They spent the night.
Hmm?
They spent the night.
Well, yeah. But what's it mean what's it say that they all sat down and ate? What's the significance in that? For us,
They agreed.
they agreed to all the details, that because you only ate with your friends, you didn't eat with your enemy. And we've talked about it before, and that even the whole point of the 23rd Psalm is that when you ate with somebody, it was had the same impact as a treaty and an agreement. Or if it was two people together, it had the same kind of connotation with it as the old cowboys and Indians, the blood brother. You could never do anything to harm. And so the full thing, everybody sitting down to eat together, means that they all ratified the oath, and they're both from Laban's side or Laban's side and from Jacob's side, that they were all in agreement. Everybody was good with it. And so they celebrated this agreement in the family, which, you would kind of expect them to anyway, because here we're about to have a family war, and everybody's literally kissed and made up and all that. So it's over, and everything seems to be good. We can we're not eating, off the campfire now. We're having a big feast, and we're all going to get up and go back home tomorrow. So, and they spent the night there, which means that they were all also together. And because to begin with, they had different camps. So early the next morning, what happens?
He goes and kisses his daughters and his grandkids and
Yep.
blesses them, and then he leaves.
Yep. He gives them the blessing, or sometimes it's translated as said farewell to, but that's usually those two things went together, and a lot of people used to do that. When somebody was leaving, what do you usually tell them at the end? goodbye, and either Godspeed or God bless you on your trip, and all those sort of things. So that's kind of what it was. And to understand that he probably knows without a doubt that this is the last time he's ever going to see any of them. So he doesn't seem to spend a whole lot of time saying goodbye or anything, and gives them the dismissal kiss and sends them on their way. And then he went home. So, and we don't ever read about him again. So now, because Jacob's moving on. So now we have chapter 32. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." And so he named that place 2 camps. One was his camp, one was the angels' camp. So Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goat, men servants and maidservants. Now I am sending this message to my Lord that I may find favor in your eyes." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." So now, what was the situation when he left his brother?
His brother's gonna kill him.
His brother said, "I'm going to kill him. As soon as Dad dies, I'm killing him." And so Jacob now's heading home. And what was it that his mother told him? "Go when it's safe. I'll send for you, and you can come home." Few days, maybe a week, 20 years have passed. And so he starts on his journey and going down there, and he knows he's going to have to face his brother to go back home because that's where God has called him to be. But he looks up, and what does he see? A camp of angels. And it is plural. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When he saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he's seen the house of God, he's seen the stairway of God, now he's seen the camp of God. And full of angels. And I mean, just why would you think that would be important or that would happen?
Oh, because that way he's protected.
Yeah, you got, what would we call them today? Backup, yeah. Yeah. I was thinking more long-term of guardian angels. So, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. Or not even so much backup, or reinforcements, but the advanced army or something. But so he names that place 2 camps, and they were all in one. They saw the angels all in another. So now he's going to try to butter his brother up. He doesn't know. He's not had any kind of contact with his brother either for 20 years. He hasn't heard from his mom. She hasn't sent him word and said it's safe to come home. So he's going out because God said, "Go home." And now, where is Esau living at this time?
In Seir, country of Edom.
Edom, which means red. It comes from the word Esau, and it is named after Esau. It is Esau's people and his country and all that. It is south of Israel, south of the Dead Sea. So he's actually into a new land of his own, which makes sense biblically as we think of the story, because who's supposed to inherit the land where they were living? Jacob. And that was part of the thing, even with the blessing and the stealing of the birthright, not the stealing of the birthright, the giving up of the birthright, and all that. And so with the blessing, Abraham tells him, this land was already given to your brother, but with the blessing that he has, he goes out and makes his own country. And this country is of Edom, is one in which comes into play in several times in the future. And one of the things that that the Jews don't understand about some of it is even when they're escaping from Egypt and then their wanderings in the wilderness as they're headed to the promised land, Edom wouldn't let them come through. And they couldn't. They said, "You're our brothers. You're our relatives." You know, Jacob and Esau, the one that founded your country, was a brother to our ancestor, and all of that. But it didn't seem to matter. The animosity that may have been between the two of them tends to carry over through the whole country. So he's not sure what's going to happen. So he sends messengers on ahead, and what do they say?
He's coming to meet with 400 other, with his backup.
Yeah, he says 2 or 3 things. Number one, I haven't come back because I've been living with family. You know, Esau would have known Laban was his uncle, and I've been there with him. And but how does he start it off? About how does he identify himself? Your servant Jacob. Now, according to the birthright and the blessing and all that, who's supposed to be the servant? Esau should be the servant of Jacob, and that's even what the blessing said that he got instead of Esau. So he's really trying to butter him up instead of saying, "Well, you know, I've come home to claim what is mine." He's not claiming any of it. He's calling himself your servant, and he's referring to him as one would refer to an older brother in this kind of a situation. So. He says, I am less than you. I'm coming to you as your servant. I've been staying with family, but while I stayed with family, I have donkey, sheep, goats, men servants, maid servants. And so I'm hoping that I can find favor in your eyes, that I'm hoping you're not mad at me anymore. Now, why would you think he would tell him I have sheep, donkeys, and all the rest?
By his favor. By his favor.
Well, kind of. We're going to see he tries to do that later. But so you got to think back 20 years. What of Isaac's is Jacob entitled to? 2/3 of everything that Isaac has. Now, he's been gone for 20 years, but that doesn't mean he's still not entitled. He has the right of the firstborn. Firstborn gets double what the next one gets. So if there's only 2, that comes out to 3 parts. So he's entitled to 2/3 of what Isaac has. And so that would also include whatever Esau has had or accomplished. So if only Esau was there, then basically everything that Isaac had, if Jacob doesn't come back, it all goes to Esau.
He doesn't need it then.
Yeah, he's trying to tell him, I don't need your stuff. I am not coming back to make a claim on my share of Dad's stuff. I've got my own. I don't need it. I'm your servant. You're the older brother. You can have it. I don't need it. I'm just trying to come in peace. So please don't be mad at me. I want you to understand, because he's got full claim to it. And I wouldn't, from a legalistic standpoint, if they took it before others of that area, other elders or different things of any of the towns or communities around, they would all say it belonged to Jacob. But he's trying to, if you really want to cause a problem, be gone for 20 years and come back and say, I want 2/3 of everything that you own. That's gonna make it go real well. So he doesn't want to do that. And so he sends them to tell Esau, I've been with family. I'm doing okay. I don't want your stuff. I just hope you don't hate me anymore. So what do his servants say as they return?
Forget it.
Yeah, we went to see him, and he's coming to you. You don't have to go to him. He found out you're still alive. He's coming to you. And what's he bringing with him?
400.
400 soldiers. Now, you got to understand, that's huge. 400 soldiers. Now, by today's standards, that's not much. But back then, if you remember, Abraham went to war with 5 kings. How many was in his army? About 350. And he was fighting 5 kings. And he beat him. So here, 400 soldiers, that's an army, or 400, and 400 men are with him. And Jacob is saying, so much for that idea. He's coming back. He's going to make sure that he's going to kill me. He's bringing the whole army with him. So, as we see in verse 7, in great fear and distress. Yeah, no kidding. In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into 2 camps. Remember, this place is 2 camps. Now he's dividing them up into 2 camps. The flocks and the herds and the camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one camp, the camp that is left may escape. Now, there's different words probably in your English Bible, but it is the same word all the way through. That Mahanaim, but all the way through it. There's just kind of a play on words all the way through. Jacob sees 2 camps. Now he's dividing everything into 2 camps. He divides the animals into 2 camps, and if Esau comes, maybe half of us can escape. He'll think he wiped out everybody, but there's the other half. And even if he's gone, at least he knows half of his kids are still alive and all that. He was able to protect some of those. And because that's what he says, if Esau comes and attacks one camp, the camp that is left may escape if he doesn't find out they're over there. So verse 9, Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become 2 groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. So, what's Jacob do?
Pray.
He prays. He has great fear. This isn't good. Great fear and distress. Like we would all, if you thought somebody was coming after you like that, you'd be in great fear and distress too. And because it's only him, there's nobody else to protect him. Laban's definitely not going to protect him anymore. And he's already left. And now he's got to go down and face his brother, and 400 men are coming. And he doesn't take into consideration that Esau may be coming in peace. He's just saying if he's bringing 400, it isn't good. So he goes and he prays. Now, the prayer is interesting. And we can kind of see his faith or actually even his doubt and his fear taking over. So where does he start? O God of my father Abraham and Isaac, O Lord, you took care of my dad, you took care of my grandpa, and I recognize you for that. And you're the one who's been with our family. And what else?
You talk to me.
You're the one that told me to go back. You're the one who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. Lord, I'm doing what you said, and it's not looking really good here. And so now he says, I'm not worthy. None of us are ever really worthy of God's grace. And he said, you have had shown kindness and faithfulness. In other words, I could always count on you. But, and all I had was the stick in my hand when I crossed the Jordan, the clothes on my back and my staff in my hand. And now look what I have in these 2 camps. So save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers and their children. So he's not just worried that Esau's going to kill him. He's worried he's going to take out the whole family, wipe out everybody. Now, why would he be concerned that Esau would wipe out let me rephrase that. Why would Esau wipe out everybody.
Because Jacob technically has the birthright.
Yeah, because whatever would belong to Jacob then would also belong to his children if they are alive. And Reuben would get twice of Simeon or whichever one was next, which you would get twice of that one and twice. And by the time you get down to number 12, the poor old Benjamin, there wouldn't have been much left. But as long as there are sons, there is a claim to the birthright. So that's what he's afraid of there about the mothers and their children. But he said, Lord, what was the promise that God made to him?
That his children would multiply.
I will make your descendants like the sand of the sea. Now, can he make his descendants like the sand of the sea with Jacob dead? Well, yeah, he can. If he's dividing them out into two groups, and you got 6 sons in one, 5 sons in the other, because this time he's only got 11 sons. And that's his whole, if he's dividing them out and he's trying to separate them and Esau wipes out one, well, the descendants of the other ones can still become like the sand of the sea. But he's concerned about that. He doesn't want any of them wiped out, which none of us would. So, but it's one of those things. Let me back up a little bit. Not one of those things. There's 2 things about this. The first one is that we see doubt. We see a kind of a lack of faith, so to speak. His fear overcomes him, and so he questions God, right? You told me to do this, and it looks to me like this is not going to turn up. This wasn't your idea, Lord. This wasn't my idea, Lord. It was yours. I was just fine in Laban's house, and I was doing, but you said go home and go to your country and your relatives. The only relatives he has is mom, dad, brother, and they're all together. So there's not, at least he thinks when he's leaving that they're all together. So, and he humbles himself. It's one of the things about prayer, and he doesn't tell God, I deserve anything. He said, but I don't deserve it. I know I don't deserve it. I didn't have anything when I started, but you said, and you promised, and I'm wanting to hold you, huh?
Sounds like a kid. You said you.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like a kid. You said, Lincoln was really bad about that. You said, you tried to tell him that something can't happen, but you said, so we've learned not to say. And so anyway, that's what he's saying here. And we see his doubt now. It's one of those things that we when we think of the people and especially the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, we talk about them being men of faith, and Abraham being the father of the faith, and he's in the chapter of faith in Hebrews that Alex has been talking about for the last few weeks in Sunday school. But we also forget that they're people, and people have doubts, people have fears, and sometimes those things overcome us. And even here, he's fearful, he's praying, but we can see he's got doubts, and he's not sure. And so one of the things it tells us, the Bible never disparages him for that, because it's human. And what it does more than anything is it's telling us when we have those same kind of doubts and fears, you're not alone. That's one of the biggest stories about it. Abraham had his times, when he told him, Sarah is my sister, not my wife. And what? Because he was afraid of he was more afraid of the king than he had confidence in God at the time. But he's still called the greatest man of faith in the Bible. But he had his fears. He had his doubts. And so now, and Isaac did, he did the same thing as his father with Rebekah and all that. And so here, we have Jacob. Now, it doesn't say he was willing to turn around. We don't see him running, But he's saying, Lord, I'm doing what you told me to do, but I'm not so sure it's going to turn out right. And so he's praying. I didn't come here on my own. You brought me here. This is where you told me to come to. I didn't have anything when I started. You've given me all these things, and now it looks like I'm going to lose everything that you did for me. So please save me from the hand of my brother Esau, for I'm afraid. I'm afraid. And I think that's one of the most important lessons in the Jacob part of the story. And even when we get down to his name change, it all kind of comes in there together. So, but it's an honest prayer. If there ever was an honest prayer, it's an honest prayer. Lord, I'm afraid. I'm trying to live the way you want me to live, but I'm afraid. And I got things to face in my life, and I'm afraid. There's nothing wrong with those prayers. That's what we see over and over again. So, verse 13, we'll see how much we can get done in 5 minutes or so. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, and 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He put them in care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds. So he's pulling out a gift for his brother. Now, how many of you are good with math and can count how many animals there were?
It was a lot.
580, I think is what, 560, 580, 590, something like that. 220 plus 220 plus 60 is 30 camels with their young. So that's 60 plus 40 plus 10 plus 20 and 10. So it's a bunch. But the point is, so if he's pulling those out for a gift to give to his brother, how much you think he has? You know.
And it said out of the ones that he kept by him.
Yeah.
So he already separated, so he had more.
So, I mean, it just tells you how well he had done in 6 years, that he can give almost 600 animals as a gift and still be in good shape. And part of that, too, is to show Esau, I don't need your stuff. You know, I'm not coming to take things from you. I'm what? I'm coming to give you stuff. God has blessed me. I don't need your things. Here, have some of this. That's the point of all of it, and why it tells us how much he gave. If it just said he gave him some sheep and goats and cows and camels and all that, we'd say, well, yeah, there may be 40, 50 animals out there. But to see that he's given him almost 600 as a gift, it also tells us that there was a lot that he still
And he wasn't
had.
going to try and rub it in his face.
No.
This is what I've got, so I'm going to.
No, he's just saying, this is your gift. Now, the other thing that he does is, does he send them all in one group?
No.
So what's he do?
Separated.
Separates them out. So why would he separate them out? So if you give them all to him at once and he's already honked off, it's going to look like one big gift, and it's no big deal. But if you get one gift, and then a second, and then a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and then it's on down there, then each one of them has a chance of winning him over a little bit more. It's not just one big gift. It is here.
Those candy bars separate.
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing with a lot of people. You could take everything, put it in one big box, give it to somebody, give them 6, 8 gifts. But it's one gift. They're going to see it as one gift. But you give them a whole bunch of little ones, and they're going to be more impressed with that. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to impress him, not just with the amounts, but it's the gift that keeps on giving. It just kind of seems like that as they come along. That's why he wants some space between them. And what he's talking about, some space, is even more space that you can't sit there and you see the one gift and you see them all lined up, that he comes across one, because he's probably coming on horseback or camels or something along that line. He's most likely riding. And but even if they're coming on foot, they come across the first one, and then it's a little bit before he comes on the other, and a little bit, so that it is separated. It is not even one gift. So he's trying to to impress him. He's trying to buy him off. He's trying to delay this. He's coming up with Jacob is a thinker, you know, and he's kind of got this all thought out. He separates everybody out into two groups, hoping that one of them will survive. He divides these gifts up, going one at a time, give them this one and give them, and each one of them, he's. I'll go ahead and we'll do the next two verses real quick. So he's instructed the one in the lead, when my brother Esau meets you and asks, to whom do you belong and where are you going and who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you are to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he's coming behind us. So, you know, that's the hope. And then the next verse just says he told the second one to say the same thing, and the next one after that to say the same thing. So that's the whole point. They're Jacob's. That's important. They're Jacob's. He's given them to his servant, to Esau. Oh, you happen to be Esau? Oh, that's cool. Here, you know, because they're not going to know who they are. That's why. But you got 400 men coming along, and they're going to say, "Whose are these? Who do you belong to? Who are you with? You know, are they yours? Or they want somebody else's?" No, we're bringing this gift to give it to Esau. You know where we can find him. And oh, well, here, this is yours. They're from your servant Jacob. And so all of it is meant to impress, one right after another. All of them saying the same thing. Oh, no, we're just traveling along. We're trying to find Esau to give these. This is a gift from Jacob to Esau. So it just kind of keeps going over and over. So and so we will pick up with 19 the next time. So I hope you all have a good evening. Good to see John on there again,
Ash Wednesday
and all the
service.
rest of them. So do what?
Ash Wednesday service.
Ash Wednesday service, 7 o'clock. So see you there. And so there won't be a midweek chat. It'll be a midweek service instead. So hope you all have a blessed evening.